Today we're going to be painting something really fun. We're going to be doing a Taylor Swift lyric inspired piece of artwork and I cannot wait. I kept this painting really abstract, very colourful and fun. Taylor likes to do a lot of diary entries and she used to write diaries when she was younger, so I kept it in that kind of theme. You can then choose any lyric that you like and any colours that you want. I'll be showing you exactly how I'm doing it and the equipment that I'm using, so let's jump straight into the tutorial. I'm using a stretched 8x10 canvas today, but if you actually wanted to do this in a diary, I think that would also be pretty cool too. You can also use a piece of paper, scrap of card, anything that you like. I have a few different size paintbrushes. This is totally personal preference. I would just have a few on standby so you have a few to use and choose from as you're painting. I've got some kitchen towel, my glass of water, and then over here in my paint palette, I've already pre-mixed a whole load of pastel colours. So I've mixed up some yellow, some orange, purple, blue, pink, all with white paint just to make sure that they were slightly lighter in tone. And then I have some pure titanium white in the corner as well. This painting is very freeing, so don't feel like you have to copy along with me, but I will be showing you exactly what I'm doing just in case you do want to paint along as well. Starting with one of my paintbrushes, and I would recommend dipping it in the water just to loosen up those bristles before we pick up some of our first shade of our paint. So I've started with my blue. You can use any shade that you want, and all I'm going to do is just start adding sort of patches and swipes and swirls across the canvas in sort of different areas. I'm leaving different gaps. What we're going to be doing is slowly building up all of these different colours so that they overlap, they're next to each other, they fill up all of the blank spaces of the canvas, and then we have this lovely colourful abstract array of rainbow shades on the background of our painting. As you can see, I'm also painting the sides of my canvas as well. You don't have to do this. Some artists choose to paint the sides and others choose not to. It's totally personal preference. This is a nice opportunity to experiment with how you're applying the paint as well, because you might want to be a little bit more thick with your application, you might want to be a bit more smooth. It's totally up to you. You can really decide what you want to do, and I would say have a little go at a few different techniques and styles and decide which one is aligning with you more today. The nice thing about this style of painting is you can really get lost in your brushstrokes and your colours, lets your mind switch off and just enjoy the process. We're going to be adding lots of different layers to this, so there's no right or wrong way. We're just going to build up the colours nice and slowly. Once you're happy with your first shade, just give your brush a good wash in the water. I like to give it a little tap on the base of my cup just to help lift off any of the excess paint. And then you can go ahead and pick up your next shade. So I'm going for this lilac purple colour, and I'm just mixing in that water from my bristles into the paint. Then we're just going to start doing exactly the same thing. So you can add this in the gaps. You might want to overlap it ever so slightly. I would always say add it to the gaps first, just so you don't mix up your colours too much. And then you can always go in and kind of blend them together if you want to when you haven't got as much paint on your brush. If you are painting the sides, I just recommend doing it as you go. I'm really not overthinking this. I'm kind of just letting my paintbrush do its thing, letting my mind wander, just really enjoying the process of adding this paint and the different colours to the canvas. When you're ready to switch colours, I would always recommend giving a paintbrush a good wash in between the colours so that they don't go too muddy. Next up, I'm picking up some of my light pink, again just mixing in the water on the bristles in with that paint, and then going ahead and just doing exactly the same thing, just filling in some of the gaps, bringing the paint up to meet some of the colours that are already on my canvas, If you want to, you can start overlapping some of them slightly as well, just to fill in those spaces. I like to make sure that I'm adding the colours to the gaps just so you can really see the shades. It's okay if you leave a little gap between each of the colours because we're going to be adding so many layers and some swipes and swirls later on. If there are any gaps that you've left, you can just cover them up later on. Just giving my brush another wash in the water. And I'm picking up some of this orange shade and I'm going to do exactly the same thing with this. Now I'm coming to the end of my colours, so I'm just going to make sure that I'm leaving a little bit of a gap for the yellow paint as well. Giving my brush another wash, I'm now going to pick up my yellow shade of paint. And again, just starting to fill in some of these final gaps. If you feel like you haven't got enough colour and you want to go back to one of your previous colours, you always can. But I think because we're going to be adding different layers on top of this, don't worry too much about it. I'm just using the leftover gaps on my canvas to focus this pure yellow paint in there so it really pops. So I've gone back to my blue colour now, and I'm just going over some of those blue sections, and where I'm getting to the edges I'm kind of swooping the brush over some of the previous colours, and I quite like when you see the movement and the texture and the shape of the bristles of the brush in the paint. So sometimes I try and really press lightly and almost lift off the brush so you can see the swoops of the paintbrush in the paint. I just think it looks quite cool, especially with these abstract paintings. But it's really up to you now what kind of shapes and patterns you want to do. If you feel like your paint underneath is still a little bit wet and it's kind of blending in a bit too much, you might just want to wait a little bit until it dries. You can always also give it a little gentle dry with the hairdryer on a low heat. As you can see, I'm overlapping some of this blue with the areas that aren't already blue on the canvas. So I've just done a swipe over that orange and that pink. And this is where we're starting to build up these different layers. I've just switched to a bigger brush and I'm just now focusing some of the pink onto the canvas. Again, just using really swooping motions, just almost lifting the end of the brush off the canvas as I go, just so I can get that nice sweep with the bristles. I'm going to swap over to a different sized brush now, and this one's got quite hard bristles. It's quite nice to experiment with different softness and strength of the bristles, because with the harder bristles you get that sort of separation with the paint. I'm just picking up the yellow and I'm just doing some swoops and dashes with this. As you can see, sometimes the paint is a little bit see-through. You can go back in and make it thicker if you want. This is just really your time to have a little play. We're essentially doodling all over our painting, and doodling for me just reminds me of diaries from when I was younger, doodling on my margins of my school textbooks. So this is very much a fun sort of activity to do, and it always looks quite cool, because if you don't like an area or you don't like a swipe that you've done, it doesn't matter, just wait for it to dry. You can cover it up with something else and it's all just part of the process. So you can just enjoy swapping between your different brushes as and when you want to, and swapping between your colours as and when you want to, and we're just going to be adding these layers in exactly the same way, just adding different swoops and swirls and zigzags. You can start creating different patterns if you want to with your paint. It's up to you what you do, but just enjoy this process. We're just going to carry on adding all of these different layers to our canvas. If you want to introduce some different colours or some different shades at this point, you can always do that as well. I might actually just mix up a slightly lighter version of my pink, so I'm just picking up a little bit of the white paint and I'm mixing it in with the pink that I've still got left on my paint palette. And then I'm just going to be using this just to add a different tone of that pink paint onto the painting. Going back to my harder bristled brush now, I'm just picking up a little bit of white paint and I'm dabbing off any of the excess just on the side of my palette. What I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to start adding a few very light, and I'm pushing down quite lightly, sort of swipes with the white paint just to add a little pop of a different shade basically. I feel like this kind of adds a little bit of a highlight to the painting. And because I'm brushing off any of the excess paint, I'm not going in with too much paint on the brush. It allows those bristles to kind of be a little bit drier, and you can get that separation with the bristles, which I think looks quite nice. This is a very 80s kind of pattern and style here that we're forming. I've also tried this in the past with black paint and it also looks really effective as well, so you can use any colours that you want. So depending where you are on your painting process, I would just take a little step back now, and this is where you can do any amendments, any changes, if you want to add anything else, if you want to create different colour. You can now go ahead and just add a few more different swipes and swirls. I've just gone in with a lighter shade of pink, and I'm just adding a little bit more pink back into the painting. You don't have to do this, it's completely up to you. I would just take a little step back. If you're happy with it, put down the paintbrush and we'll move on to the next section. This is just your time to add anything that you want. We then want to leave our painting to dry before we move on to the next bit. So my painting is now nice and dry. I've got a pencil here and a rubber, and we're basically going to sketch out and draw out what we want our lyrics to be and where we want them on our canvas. So I have a blank piece of paper here, and what I like to do is just mark out the rough size of my canvas. So I'm just marking those edges on both sides, just with the pencil, just lightly. And then I'm going to draw this up together, and this just gives me an idea of the size of canvas that, or paper or diary, whatever you're using, and where I want my lyrics to sit. The thing is with writing anything down is often it gets a bit wobbly and ski whiff, but again, because we're keeping in style with like a diary entry, we don't need it to be too neat. In fact, I think it has a little bit more charm and character when it isn't too neat. But I've picked my lyric and I'm just going to sketch it out now on my piece of paper, just so I can work out where I want the letters to be, where I want the words to be, if I want them really neat, if I want them more kind of scrawled onto the paper. I'm going to make mine kind of not level or even, but I'm trying to be slightly neat and keep it towards the middle section of the canvas. You can do this a few times. You can try this with a few different lyrics if you want. You can try it in a few different styles, handwriting styles. It's really up to you what you're doing now. So I'm just working out where I want to start writing this onto my canvas, and then I'm going to very carefully write this onto my canvas. Now we want to be careful when we're using pencil. We don't want to push too hard. It's really hard to rub out once you've drawn it onto paint. So just push down lightly. We're going to be covering this up with our paint afterwards. It's just so that we can see it. I'm just using the piece of paper just to act as the base, just so I know where I'm bringing my letters down to, just so it doesn't go completely wonky. Although I do think there's a certain charm. If the letters and the words are a bit wonky, don't worry about it, just go with it. I'm just going to carry on writing in the words of the lyrics in the same way across the canvas. So you can do the same as well with your lyrics. And once you've written your lyrics in, we're now going to move over to painting over the top of them. So I'm going to start with some white as my base. I've got some white titanium white already on my palette, and I'm going to be using this Winsor & Newton. This is called Opera Rose. It's a lovely bright pink colour, and I've just mixed the two together. And I've got a couple of small paintbrushes, a clean cup of water, and my kitchen towel. So I'm just loosening the bristles in the water, and I'm just mixing some of that water in with my paint just to make sure that the paint stays nice and fluid and isn't too dry. You can use any colour that you want to paint over the top, and I'm going to do 2 or 3 layers of this just to make sure that I've really covered up that pencil. I'm just carefully taking the paint and just pushing down very lightly with my paintbrush, just using the very tip of this small paintbrush, just so I can have some more control with what I'm doing. Don't worry if you can see the pencil mark through. This is just the first layer. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a couple of different layers with my paint, just working my way from the top to the bottom. I'm just doing another layer of paint over the top of the dried paint, and then I'm going to be moving over to using some pens to do some extra little details and some doodles with. So with the pens, you can use any colour that you want. I've got 2 white pens here and a black one. I think I'm going to stick with the white ones for this, but it's completely personal preference. You can use whichever one you want, or you can go super colourful and use loads of different Sharpies. But this is the white pen that I'm going to be using. And what I'm going to start by doing is just picking a few random bits from the house, from the kitchen. I've got an egg cup here that I can use to draw around, and this is going to be for the circumference of the disco balls. So I want a couple of different sizes of my disco balls. Depends on the size of canvas or what you're painting on. I'm just going to start by outlining some of the letters of the words. Now you don't have to do this. I kind of just focus this on the left hand side as if it's like a little bit of shadow on some of the letters. So you can just see that I'm doing this across all of the words. I'm then taking my egg cup and I'm just placing it on a gap on my canvas, and I'm just very carefully drawing around it using the white pen. I'm not using the pencil anymore, I'm just going straight in with the white pen and just carefully drawing around it so I get a nice circle. I'm then just doing very slightly curved lines going from either side to the other, and this is going to start creating the first sort of patterns and shapes of our disco ball. So it's a very sort of curved line, as you can see, going all the way down, equal distance. And then I'm going to do the same, but just broken lines going down, starting in either side, just doing these in between the other lines, and this is going to give an effect of an illustrative style disco ball. It's a very, very simple pattern to do, as you can see. You can always practice it on your spare bit of paper as well if you want to before you do it on your canvas. And then I'm just going to do a little string or 2 little strings going from the top, just overflowing the top of the canvas. And then whenever you're ready, you can just place your next circle shape anywhere that you want, anywhere that you've got space on your canvas. And we're just repeating the same process with this, so just doing the slightly curved lines going from left to right across this circle, all the way down to the bottom. And then when you're ready, we're going to do the broken lines going from top to bottom, just in between these lines, just little dashes. This just gives the illusion of the circular disco ball. If you want to, you can also add the string at the top as well, as if it's hanging from somewhere. You don't even necessarily need to see where it goes. It can just be a little doodle line going up like that. Have a little step back, decide where else you want your disco ball. You could have them kind of coming off the edges of the canvas as well if you don't feel like you have enough room. That's what I'm doing with this one here. And then it's just repeating the exact same process again. You can add as many disco balls as you want to your painting. When you're ready, we're going to add a few sparkles in the shape of stars to our painting. So I'm going to start with my disco ball, and I'm just going to flick the pen outwards, always starting from the same point. And this should just give us a nice illusion of sparkle on the side or in the middle of the disco ball. You can have some that are slightly bigger, some that are slightly smaller, and it's really up to you how many of these you want to do. So I'm going to place a few of them on the actual disco balls themselves, and then I'm also going to place a few just randomly in the background of the canvas as well. You can see I'm working quite quickly. I'm just really dashing out the nib of the pen just to make sure it goes into a nice sort of sparkly shape. Some of the lines might be slightly longer than others. That always works quite well. Gives the illusion that they're gleaming and glistening. You can always have some coming off the sides of the letters as well. And then I'm just going to place a few randomly in the background. If you like this video, then be sure to subscribe to our channel. We bring new art tutorials all the time so that you can get creative from home. We're at Brush and Bubbles on Instagram and on TikTok. You can always say hi to us over there. We love hearing from you all. I hope you all enjoyed this Taylor Swift inspired artwork. If you did, then be sure to give us a little thumbs up, and I can't wait to see you all again for our next tutorial. Thanks everyone! Bye!